right, it's 2 o'clock. I think we can get started. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming to my session. Today, we're going to talk about guest configuration. And before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself. This is actually my first time attending a PowerShell conference and my first time in Vienna. So my name's Jodi Boone. I'm the new PM for guest configuration. A little bit about me. I'm coming from Seattle for the conference, but I'm actually Canadian. So what that means is that I say sorry a lot, and my French is abysmal. So je suis désolé. Feel free to reach out to me via email, Twitter, or over LinkedIn if you have any other questions following the presentation. So before we get started, I just want to again say a huge thank you to our sponsors for making this all possible. I've had a ton of fun this week, and I think that I can speak for the group when everyone else has too. So thanks again to everyone on the screen. Awesome. So before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about what this session is going to cover, what I hope you get out of it, and then I'm hoping to leave a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So we're going to go over an overview of our service as well as our current feature set to talk about what we've really been up to over the last couple of years. We're going to talk about some product updates and milestones. We're going to squeeze 2 demos in, talking about 2 integrated scenarios, one with Azure Automanage, and then another using our native guest configuration PowerShell module. And then we're going to have some time to go over some roadmaps as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I like to introduce our service based on a scenario. Let's say that you're a customer that has one or many resources in Azure, and you want to manage the configuration of these resources at cloud scale. That's the scenario that guest config is really working to address. And we are excited to announce a lot of integrated scenarios using Azure Automanage, Policy, as well as Microsoft Defender for Cloud in order to achieve this, both in Azure native environments as well as hybrid environments through the Arc for Server offering. And just because there weren't that many hands up when I brought up this service on Monday, when we're talking about configuration files, we're talking about additional settings and properties available on a machine. So these are things like operating system settings, application configuration, as well as environment settings. So let's just talk about our service in terms of our 3 major assignment types. So the first one is audit. So when you apply a configuration artifact to a machine, the first thing that you can do with it is audit the settings of your machine against the configuration in order to monitor for compliance. But however, in this setting, we're not actually going to release any changes onto the machine. We're just going to be reporting that status back up to you through either the Azure portal or Azure Resource Graph. The second assignment type is apply and monitor. And so in this case, what we do when you apply the configuration to one or many Azure resources, we're going to first release the changes specified within the configuration to that machine and then monitor for change. However, if this drifts out of compliance, we're not going to be going back in to fix it unless that remediation is triggered by you. And our third operation type is the apply and autocorrect assignment type. And in this case, again, we release that change if there is a setting based on your configuration that's not compliant initially. And then we also will autocorrect any changes in the event of configuration drift. And across all 3 of these auditing modes, we provide seamless reporting through the Azure Resource Graph, as well as various views in the portal, which I'll be going through as well. Awesome, so now we're going to look at some of our other features and functionality. So the first one I'd really like to highlight is support for both Linux and Windows. This is a list of the major distros that we do currently support. And we do have an ongoing commitment to support new Linux distros as they become supported by Azure. We have functionality in hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So again, this supports Azure VMs, servers running on-prem, or at other cloud providers. And something I'd really like to emphasize at this point is that our extension does ship natively with Arc for Server. So that's a feature that a lot of our customers have really appreciated and allows us to, again, really provide value to those hybrid and on-prem customers as well. Awesome, and we have advanced reporting through the Azure Resource Graph, which includes the resource ID as well as the state. And this reporting is actually also available after the life of the machine, which is really relevant in case there's a machine that's so out of compliance that you want to delete it right away and look at the logs later. Those logs will still be available. And it's also really helpful in the case of ephemeral machines or things like that. So that reporting is really persistent, which is super helpful as well. You can manage multiple configurations for the same machine, so this helps to avoid partial or fragmented configuration scenarios, and you can apply many configurations to one machine through Azure Policy, which I will show you after this as well. And you can create custom packages in addition to built-in content that's provided by Microsoft. So that's our scenario where we allow you to assign compiled DSC configurations as guest configuration resources in order to be able to extend the capabilities of DSC to the Azure control plane. So I'll be going over a quick demo where we do that as well after this. So we can keep going. Awesome. So some other product updates that we wanted to share. I know we talked about this a little bit during the keynote already, but I do just want to shout out again that PS desired state configuration is now open source. Yeah, woo! Awesome. Yeah, so Mike Green announced this at the conference about 5 years ago, so it's really exciting to be able to come back to PSConfEU and show how the hard work of the community as well as the Microsoft community paid off. So yeah, woo! Awesome. So this one isn't a totally fresh announcement if you are up to date on your Azure governance and management blog posts, but another change that I want to announce is a little bit of a different type. So after undergoing some usability and user research studies, we've listened to our users and the community and are excited to announce a new change that represents our current feature set. So guest configuration is now machine configuration. Ooh, yeah. So we're excited to, again, really reinforce our support for both Azure native and hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So machine was really a way to kind of reinforce this commitment as well. And just a sort of anecdote from this study as well. We found out through user research study that the word guest in Czech actually translates to host. So we're excited to announce a more localized alternative as well. Awesome. So the second piece of this rebrand is we're also really excited to be aligning ourselves under the Automanage brand umbrella. And what we're really looking to do here is focus on a full stack Azure management services configuration point of view. So when we talk about Automanage, we often refer to it as DSC within Azure, because what it allows you to do is specify an existing set of Azure management services that you then will be onboarded to. And if you drift out of compliance or configuration for any of the additional Azure management services, you will then be brought back into configuration. So I'll be showing an end-to-end scenario demo of our Automanage best practices offering, but I quickly just want to go through this service really quickly before we go into that. So we intelligently onboard and configure to selected best practices Azure services. We configure the guest operating system per the Microsoft baseline configuration. So this applies the server security best practices via the machine configuration extension and provides that same single pane of reporting throughout Azure. We support flexibility through the custom profile option. So when we first released this service, we onboarded users to a really opinionated set of Azure management services to be onboarded to. And these were specific to production versus dev test environments. Oops. But after more research, we discovered that users really need the capability to customize these services based on their individual needs. So we have the custom profile option, which I'll be showing you in a second. And this is the piece that we really like to talk about, which is that we automatically detect for drift and correct when it's detected. So let's say that you wanted to be onboarded to Azure Monitoring, and the dependency agent is deleted on one or more machines, maybe across a whole resource group. Automanage will be able to detect for that drift and then reinstall the agent on the machines that are non-compliant in order for you to not be worried about your Azure resources drifting out of compliance with a preset custom profile that you've specified. And we also provide a point-and-click portal experience as well as deployments through ARM. So without further ado, I will just go over a quick demo of Azure Automanage. Awesome. So first things first, you can just look up Automanage within the Azure portal and click into the service. And here you see our two main offerings, the Azure Machine Best Practices offering, as well as the Managed Configuration Profiles offering. So let's go ahead and create a configuration profile that will apply to a resource group.
Can you make it bigger?
Yes, definitely. Megan, is an excellent PM on my team who gives me unlimited use to her internal subscription. So thanks, Megan, for sponsoring this demo. Okay, so we can make the configuration profile name Jodi demo PSConf. We're going to be using Megan's internal consumption, and we'll apply this to the resource group that I've already created called Jodi demo RG. So now let's go ahead and look at the services that this custom profile will enroll every machine in this resource group to. So we're going to enable Azure Backup. And if this is a service that you are or aren't interested in, you can opt out. So we're just going to opt out of this for now because this is just a test machine. That's not something that I'm especially interested in. And let's say that I actually also have my own anti-malware solution that I want to implement versus the Microsoft anti-malware solution. Again, instead of having to specify the configuration of the Microsoft anti-malware solution that I'm interested in, I have my own, so I'm going to opt out of it. I am, however, going to stay enrolled in the Machine's Insights monitoring, as well as the Automanage machine configuration offering, which will again apply the server security best practices. For Windows, we provide these baselines in 3 different auditing modes. So Audit, Apply and Monitor, as well as Apply and Autocorrect, but it will enroll you into the Audit only by default. However, if you're applying this configuration profile using an ARM template, you can specify one of the other auditing modes. We'll enable update management, change tracking and inventory, as well as Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and we'll just go ahead and create. Awesome, so we should be able to see that there in a second. Jodi demo PSConf. So that is the Automanage custom config profile offering. And again, now I have full confidence that this resource group will stay compliant as per my configuration profile selection. You can go back to the slide. I did take some screenshots because I went to Thomas's demo, so I know that in a presentation you can often lose internet. So next up, I'm going to be going over the machine configuration demo, where I'm going to be using our PowerShell commandlets to use a compiled DSC configuration that both checks the most recent TLS version on my system and sets it to TLS 1.2 if that is not currently set. So let's go over to the VS Code extension where I can run through this demo with everyone. Awesome.
Can you make it bigger, please?
Yes. Can everyone see that all right? Awesome. So recently we've released version 4.1.0 of our guest configuration module, and we have some changes to the commandlets. So I'm just going to go through and execute this command and go over the current functions that we provide. So the first one is get guest configuration package compliance status. And so what this commandlet does is it audits after you've created a guest configuration package. What we do is we check the folder structure of the package that you've created and audit those settings against the settings that are currently on the machine that you are running this on. So it's a way to locally test the compliance of your machine as well as the structure of the package. The new guest configuration package takes in your compiled DSC resource as well as other variables that you would need to create the package properly. So the audit and set capabilities, as well as the path of the compiled configuration, as well as the overall name of the package. The new guest configuration policy is able to take this package and through additional parameters, create the necessary policy metadata in order to be able to apply this config at scale through Azure Policy. And the new guest configuration and the protect guest configuration package allows you to sign these packages as well for enhanced security. And the start guest configuration package remediation allows you to again test that the set capabilities on the package on your local system are acting as they're supposed to. So we'll go through an example using all of these now. Awesome, so we're gonna get started and create our package. All right, great. So we can see that the guest configuration package has been created at setsecureprotocol.zip. And next up, we're just going to check the configuration status or the compliance status locally based on this package. Also, again, if there are any questions as I'm going, please feel free to jump in. So you can see here that the compliance status is false. And so I'm not going to go ahead and change a registry key during a demo, but I do have a VM where I can do that, so I can show you the output of what this looks like when you run it on a local machine. So we're going to start the guest configuration package remediation on this machine to make sure that TLS 1.2 is set as expected. Awesome, so through triggering that remediation, we can see that TLS 1.2 is now set onto the machine through the compliance status reading as true. And so we can go ahead and continue back on our demo on my local system. Okay, so now we're going to begin to leverage some of the AZ Commandlet options as well and go through the process of creating a new storage account. And the reason that I'm doing this is because the guest configuration package that you've just created needs to be publicly accessible via HTTPS, but we can embed it with a SAS token in order to restrict who has read and write access to it as well. So.
Also with a private link?
We do support over private link as well, yes. We'll just give it a second. Great, so now we have access to the guest configuration blob storage. And what we're going to do is now grab the context and the key for this storage in order to be able to pass it into additional AZ storage commandlets. And now what we're going to do is, again, go ahead and set that guest configuration package into the guest configuration blob storage that we've just created. Awesome. And now we're going to generate a content URI, including a SAS token, which will just give us, for now, full read, write, and delete access, but you can obviously specify that as you choose. Great. So now we're going to go ahead and test our policy artifacts. And what we're going to do is generate a GUID that will act as the policy ID. And we will also create a policy named Testing TLS Policy PSConfEU 4. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and now run the new guest configuration policy commandlet. And I'll just go over some of the parameters that are required to use this now. So again, we do need that GUID for the unique policy ID. We're going to pass in the content URI representing the public location of the package that we've just uploaded using the AZ storage commandlets. The display name is the Testing TLS Policy PSConfEU 4. We are testing my TLS policy today. And it's going to save the policy metadata in the folder policies locally. We're running this on Windows, and we are self-versioning this policy as 1.0.0, and we're applying this policy in the mode of apply and autocorrect. So let's go ahead and run this.
Will it auto set a version if you don't specify? Will it auto set a version if you don't specify?
Oh, I was just going to say it's a way of self-versioning to track your own changes as well. So if you created a new policy, it is required. Great, so this is where the policy JSON file is now sitting. And what we're going to do is use this metadata in order to create a new policy definition. So we're going to call it set secure protocol. We are referencing the JSON file that the new guest configuration policy just output, and we're going to be uploading this at the scope of the subscription ID, Megan's internal consumption, but awesome. The green is good. Again, we're going to get a reference to the resource group that I'm testing this on. And we're going to save reference to the definition that we just uploaded. And then we're going to create a new policy assignment. So we're going to set this apply and autocorrect TLS policy at the resource group that we've assigned above. So that's in my subscription under the Jodi demo RG. Great, so that was successful. And now what you can do to check again that this was working as expected is you can go into the policy terminal or the policy view in the portal and click into your definitions. And we are going to filter to category guest configuration. Awesome. And the testing TLS policy PSConfEU 4 that we just ran, it'll probably be a little bit delayed getting to the portal, but here's an example of what that policy definition looks like. Oh. I saved the wrong thing somewhere, but this is working as expected, which is great to see. Awesome. Okay, great. And let's just now look again at what some of this is going to look like in the portal once our agent has picked this up and has run its first scan. So let's just look at the top 3 lines here. So these are the 3 machines that I currently applied this configuration package to. And the Jodi config demo VM was the VM that I did just locally run this package on. So it's showing as compliant as expected. However, the 2 machines below are not showing as compliant, even though the configuration was applied at the resource group level. Does anybody have any guesses why that might be the case? Well, that's because you have to make sure that the guest configuration extension has been enabled onto these individual VMs. And so, and this is just one other view I wanted to highlight quickly. When you click into any of these rules, you do have, again, that sort of single pane compliance reporting where you can look at a per rule level, which rules in the configuration you've applied are compliant versus non-compliant, as well as some sort of brief reason messaging. But now we've navigated into the Jodi demo VM, which was one of the machines that was showing as non-compliant, even though the configuration was applied at the resource group level, which this sits in. And so what you need to do is make sure that you have our extension added. So recently we've been uploaded to the extensions marketplace. So if you clicked into add, and then Google machine configuration, you will be able to now automatically load our extension onto your machine, but you can also still achieve this using the prerequisites initiative as that has been done previously. So these are one of two ways you can make sure that on your Azure native VMs this extension is properly installed. But again, we do ship with the Arc server agent as well, so this is not a step that you would need to take in managing an Arc server. Awesome, and before I move down to our roadmap items, does anybody have any questions about either the two demos, or we can save questions to the end?
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
The extension, you also have to manually update that, or does that go through the Windows Store or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is actually in the Azure Extensions Marketplace. So if you click into the TOC here in Extensions and Applications, you can add this extension individually, but you can also add it at the resource group, and then at the subscription group or higher, you are able to apply the necessary prerequisites using the policy initiative.
Yeah, and once it's installed on the machine,
Yes.
how does it update?
We do currently support auto updates. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Can you schedule the remediation, the reboot the VM?
That's a great question, and that's something that we are looking at supporting, but don't at this time. And I would definitely encourage you to fill out the survey at the end, so that so assuming that's something that you want, that we can make sure that we note as we look into future investments. Awesome. Okay, great. So now we're just going to do a little bit of a dive into our roadmap. So the first thing that I just want to cover is the GA of our remediation feature. So currently our apply and monitor and our apply and autocorrect assignment types are in public preview. This is something that we shipped over the last year, and the team has been working really hard at getting these to GA, and we will be excited to announce that hopefully quite soon, so stay tuned. The next thing I want to highlight is support for Vmss. So we are planning to start to support virtual machine scale sets and be able to audit and apply configurations across this new resource type. This is a roadmap item as well as an ongoing commitment. So new distro support. So as Azure supports any new distros, we have a commitment as a platform to also supporting them as well. Support for all archetypes. So again, we do ship with the Arc agent, and we are planning on supporting additional archetypes such as Arc for HCI, Arc for VMware, and as well as Arc for SCVMM. And additional built-in content. So additional built-in content represents configuration packages that are managed and maintained globally by Microsoft. We are working on creating more useful built-in content for you to encompass different operational and security best practices, and to encompass all three of our different auditing modes. And one thing we're excited to announce too is that we will be releasing the TLS policy to be able to set TLS 1.2 via the Azure policy that I just showed. So again, stay tuned for that, but something that we are excited to be able to provide. Awesome. So now I would just like to open the floor for Q&A. I'm really excited to be here to meet more of the DSC community as well. And please fill out the survey to make sure that any and all of your questions, comments, and concerns can be properly addressed if you don't want to bring them up now for some reason. But yeah, let's get started. Yes. Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's definitely sort of phase 2 for us. One thing that we wanted to emphasize with the rename was to make sure that this was really discoverable for our portal users. And we will likely be making command line changes, but they're a little bit out of scope for now. So it'll still be guest configuration for a while. Yeah. Yes.
You talked about where the compliance data get involved. So when you track the compliance status for machine status, it stays for a long time even after the machine is deleted. Whereabouts is that data stored, and how long is it by default stored?
I would have to double check by default how long it's stored, but it is stored in the Azure Resource Graph.
Okay, so can we forward it to Log Analytics?
Can it be forwarded to Log Analytics? I am not 100% sure about that, but maybe leave that question again in the survey and I can get back to you after this. Yeah.
You gave an example of enforcing TLS version. Are there other examples you have for what customers, next customers are getting with, I guess, machine config?
Yeah, so our most commonly, one of our most common packages is the Azure Server Security Best Practices, or baseline, sorry. And so that's a set of about 200 rules that are sort of more regulatory compliance oriented, and those are available through the Microsoft Defender for Cloud offering as well. So originally, like our platform has been focused on sort of security and governance, and we're also working to invest more in custom configuration scenarios as well. Yes.
So when you go to the security center,
Yeah.
you can say, I want the log analytic agent automatically installed when a VM gets created. Will that also maybe deal with the Automanage extension?
Sorry, so
when I go to the,
Yeah.
the security center,
Mhm.
there's a little chat that if the VM gets created,
Yeah.
it automatically gets the log analytics agent in the VM, and it's going towards my log analytics. And I thought it would be a good idea also to have the extension that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And every time that a VM gets created.
yeah.
But I'm not sure if that is under your team, but I would like it that it,
Yeah.
I don't know, it just is there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's something I'm not 100% sure about right now. But again, I agree that would be a great idea. Yeah, survey. Yeah. Awesome. Anything else? Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody.